and welcome to our 15th edition of our Cardano Developer Office Hours. I'm your host today, and we have an exciting hour lineup for you, starting right now. Today, we have our special guest, Mateusz Czeladka, that will be presenting Reeve. So what to expect? For the next 30 minutes, you're going to get an in-depth overview of the project, including a sneak peek of the front-end UI, the project's architecture, and then also the current state of the development. And then you wrap up with some QA questions, so feel free to share anything like your thoughts or questions that you have. Just a reminder, the first 30 minutes will be recorded and will be available in our YouTube channel, and then the last 30 minutes, each one to be recorded. And then, again, just another reminding, if you have not yet subscribed to our calendar event, so please click in the link that's shared in the chat to do so. Thank you all for being here, and let's get started with Mateusz. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so this is a presentation about Reeve, some technical insights in architecture, but obviously it will be mainly technical focused, but it's impossible, to pretty much get a little bit of the product insights and what is it all about. So we will do some introduction and some basics there. So actually, let's jump right into it. We're all visual people, right? So this is our current front end, which is at the moment not open source. Hopefully in the future, but at the moment not. As you can see from here, it's a list of transactions available. And you can basically import transactions from any ERP systems. You can have a look at the transactions, like the batches that you have imported. There's the data explorer. There are some settings. There's the logging, and so on and so forth. But from the most basic things on the data model, we have we try to find like the core of the ERP domain model, because obviously we want to work with many ERP systems. So you have very basic things like transaction number, transaction date, transaction type, transaction amount, the local currency. LCY stands for a local currency. How many items, and basically transactions have items because it's a double entry accounting, double bookkeeping. And yeah, the items have document number, currency, amount for the foreign currency, and so on and so forth. I won't get too deep into that because everything is on the screen, but there are rather basic attributes and parameters that should be also working for small organizations, larger, medium organizations. Yes. For larger organizations, yeah, maybe like super large, maybe not, but for medium, for small to medium, it should be fine. These parameters. Yeah, and at the top there is a publish button as well. Okay. So the next screenshot, just for the sneak peek, is because what you see here is a list of transactions, but we also have reports. So at the moment, Reeve for the MVP will support two types of reports. I'll talk about this later, but here you can see an example for balance sheet for 2023. We actually already did a soft launch, and we have published, yeah, how much crypto assets foundation has, and all the things which normally go under within the balance sheet. Yeah. So that's how it looks like. That information is also available on chain. This is just obviously the UI here. Just like transactions, reports can also be published on chain. And here we can see some mocks. This is not real life production data because the 2025 reports have not been published yet, but you can see some mocks of the income statement and balance sheet that have been published on chain for a user to be able to open it, view them, and so on and so forth. So, what do we want to do for an MVP launch? We had a soft launch, but will be MVP launch soon. We have a kick log for user management, right? So user can log in, but it's also the website is available publicly. obviously you cannot import from the ERP system. You are not authorized, but you are able to view basically the data about the organization in a read-only mode. You can import transactions from ERP system, and you can approve them or not approve them. This could be a little controversial feature for some people. Why approval? Why not everything? There are sometimes legal constraints what Cardano Foundation can put on chain due to some sort of agreements that it might have with third parties. That a third party, like let's say, some stable coin provider or something might not want to reveal. We might not be eligible to reveal basically the amounts. There are reports, income statement and balance sheet. I already showed that. These are the most important for an organization, but there are way more reports that can be added, but it's an MVP. Since Cardano Foundation uses Oracle NetSuite, then we have a ERP adapter that obviously that's the first thing that we did is to our ERP system, but of course I will show later that it can be extended. And for this ERP system, especially with the Altavia plugin, we needed also to do some small adjustments to the data. So we also have the concept of a adapter and connector. I will explain that a little bit later. This is just a sneak peek. We have an organization management module and setup module for data enrichment. Obviously we are publishing to Cardano, or maybe not obviously, but we are publishing to Cardano blockchain, both transactions and reports. Sorry. We also have a basic blockchain extraction. So after the data is published, it's possible to read it back. And at the moment, for the simplicity reasons, mainly, we have on-chain identity via other handle project using sub-handles. In general, other handles, but more specifically sub-handles even for it. So you know that this is coming from us, not from somebody else. It's not fake. And this wallet belongs to us. So this is the high-level architecture. We are using Postgres database for the main accounting data, with also including the audit details. Since this is a financial product, it has quite strict requirements in terms of auditability, which user performed what action and what time. So we have an organization module, which I've already mentioned. This is the configuration of the organization and all the setup for the organization, but not user data. It's just organization data. We have the most important module, which is the ERP core module, which we try to keep as close to the accounting that you would learn typically at school as possible, because every ERP system has something specific, but it should be as close to let me call it real world accounting. Well, not real world. Sorry, it's not real world. It's theoretical accounting, actually opposite of real world. Theoretical accounting, right? And then we have a blockchain publisher module. That one is actually, there's an arrow here missing between accounting module and blockchain module. Apologies for that, but basically it's the module which is responsible to send the data on Cardano layer 1. And we are using metadata transactions at the moment. Mainly for simplicity reasons, and for the fact that it's easy to read such a data in any explorer. That can be changed, and I will also mention that there are some ideas how we could change that, but that's at the moment the state. So anybody using any Cardano Explorer can have a look for API for the transactions and for the reports. For the transactions, we call module 1 internally, and reports we call module 3. Yeah, we have a UI, and you saw a sneak peek, and that UI is basically interacting with all modules. The blockchain module, the UI is written in React, and I can't remember what we are using for the data management there, if it's Redux or not, but generally speaking, it's a React UI. And on the, what did I want to say? For user management, we are using Keycloak. It's quite a powerful product. Why not using Identity Wallet or some other solution? It's just basically was a bit too early to do that. The Identity Wallet hasn't been still fully officially launched, so that's coming very soon, but not yet. And it was a bit too early to start that. So we used an industry standard OAuth. It's quite a good product. In terms of ERP systems, as you can see at the top here, we have a NetSuite from Oracle, our CF instance, and we have a special adapter to it that we needed to write, which is transforming the data into our core model. We are effectively anti-corrupting the domain model of NetSuite, so we have our own representation, which is working both for the traditional assets but also for the crypto assets. For the crypto assets, we are using a new ISO standard. I forgot now exactly but basically the product is working both for crypto assets and for non-crypto assets with the ISO standards to back it up. And those ISO standards also end up on chain. So these are not our standards, how we, for instance, represent currencies, and especially in crypto, as you know, currencies can be very complicated. You can have USDC on this chain, USDC on that chain. Then you have bridge tokens. You can have native deployment, basically of a particular token. So it's relatively complicated. That's why we are piggybacking on the standard, which I just forgot the particular ISO that we are using for it. So because the system is designed to be in an extendable way, then you can connect to your own ERP system, but you need to write your own adapter and connector. Adapter is a little bit harder. Connector is very trivial. It's just some small data manipulation and adjustments that might need to be done, mainly because of the fact that adapters that you want to keep adapters generic, basically, right? So if you go to another organization, you would also, which is using NetSuite, you would also typically want to use NetSuite, for instance, Altavia adapter or core adapter, because there are a few possibilities there. We don't have the other adapters. We only have the Altavia adapter. So, but long story short is that you want to keep adapter generic, so you can reuse it across multiple organizations. But sometimes you need to tweak the data a little bit, and that's why there is this notion of a connector. Maybe the name is a little bit unfortunate, but could be like called transformer or preprocessor. That could be another word that could be used to describe its function. Here, as I mentioned, the metadata transactions are sent to the blockchain. The project is open source under Apache 2 license. I shared the link here. And that's pretty much it when it comes to this. Maybe one more thing before we progress. So we are using, because you could ask the question, is there any message broker or anything like that? How the communication is exactly happening between the modules? Is there Kafka here? Is there RabbitMQ or Sonic MQ, JMS, or whatever messaging technology? I mean, yes and no. Generally speaking, the project started as something which is called a monolith, which is not a monolith. It's also not a microservices architecture, but we actually have one microservice here. This one, the blockchain reader module, is a microservice. But what you see here, with my the moment that I'm highlighting, is basically historically speaking, and I still think it is one deployable unit. So basically, those are modules within a deployable unit, and there's historically speaking, there hasn't been any Kafka or any message broker here. But we are adapting the architecture that we will have Kafka. I believe it's already working. That some modules between other modules will communicate via Kafka, mainly for separation reasons, for security reasons, but it's a little bit maybe too deep at the moment within that presentation. But just to finish off this topic before I move on, it's almost what we're trying to do is not microservices architecture, right? But we almost trying to do micro monoliths architecture, which is not really established in the wild that much. So, but probably a little bit too deep for this first presentation, and for 30 minutes for sure. Okay, so it's all good. Soon, no timelines, but soon, quite soon, right? We will have an MVP. But what are some of the ideas that the team has to extend it? Like, what are the missing features? So basically, the features are grouped into two categories, or the things that the team could be working on. And the team will continue working at least until end of the year, I believe. And I categorize them into two categories, right? Web 2 features and Web 3 features, or ideas, rather, they should be called. Why? Because if you can see from this graph, right, or from this presentation, it could be quite clear to you that a significant part of this project has nothing to do with the blockchain. The blockchain is just here, these parts, right? The one that I'm highlighting here with the mouse. The rest is off-chain. It's just how you typically build traditional systems. So that's why I separated this into two parts. So for the Web 2, we could add basically more reports. So at the moment, we only have balance sheet and income statement report. We could support reports with the crypto assets. So if I go back to here, you can see this is only in the traditional currency. We are translating, obviously, the crypto assets that Foundation has into Swiss francs, because that is the official currency of the Cardano Foundation. But it doesn't change the fact that it would be nice to see already in this report, or another report rather, how much crypto assets there are. So for that, I guess we would have to create new report, an official report, or maybe even the industry already has some sort of reports, official reports for crypto assets on the balance sheet. So we have to explore that, because the traditional income statement and balance sheet, obviously, they are made for the traditional currencies, Swiss francs, USD, Euro, and what's not. Then we would like to, sorry, this is the wrong slide, excuse me. Then we would like to provide multi-currency reports. So for instance, that not only that you see Swiss franc value, but it's just translated to whatever currency user chooses when he publishes the report, USD, Euro, and what's not. We would like to have more advanced graphs and dashboards. Unfortunately, I didn't show you any graphs and dashboards, but the Reeve product contains ability to inspect the transactions and the reports, so that you can see various things, basically. It's not the main product presentation, but yeah, we would like, or maybe even with the community support, that would be most preferable, but there could be definitely more ERP adapters or plugins, however we call them. There is even an idea that has been discussed that we could have a Google spreadsheet plugin for those organizations, especially that are very, let's say, like very small, very tiny organization. Maybe somebody is doing accounting on their own without using a professional software. With some caveats, you could even try to use Google Spreadsheet for it. But again, with some caveats, it's not a Google Spreadsheet is not an accounting software, just to be clear. We would like to introduce a subscription module because there might be situations that somebody wants to use the module 1, which is the transactions, but not module 3, which is the reports. Module 1 is more expensive for a person wanting to use that because you have to send all the transactions to layer 1 and pay the cost for them. Module 3 is quite cheap. And I'm not talking about the prices that we set, but in a sense for a person to carry the cost, the ADA cost, right? There are also some small cosmetic things that have been requested, like to have a CSV export, so that then those transactions can be sent somewhere or to an accountant and what's not. So I call them tiny bits and pieces because it's just cosmetic features. Improve setup management. Our setup management still is relatively simple. It's not a very difficult task to do, but it's just time consuming to do it back and front and everything. And we would like to have auto-generated reports from transaction data. At the moment, we don't have that, and probably for MVP, we'll not be able to do this. But if you think about that, that's actually where we should go, right? You have a transaction data, the core data, and then you generate the reports from them. At least for somebody that has both modules, module 1 and module 3, it should be possible. But somebody that only has a module 3, obviously then that's not possible because there is no transaction data. The only way is that you need to input the report manually, basically, and then that report will go on chain. What are the Web3 ideas moving forward? That's probably the most interesting part because Web2 is like, how hard can it be, right? But with Web3, that's what we are trailblazing in our crypto industry. So, wow, there's quite a lot here. So at the moment, we are publishing data as metadata, mainly because we want the data on chain to be readable, right, by third parties, by us, by anybody, by the Cardano community, anybody, right? But there is nothing saying that we can't publish the data as Bluetooth transactions, Bluetooth data transactions, right? So that would basically make it accessible to the smart contracts, but unfortunately at the expense of readability, because the way those datums are represented, it's just hex, pretty much, right? Hex strings. What we would like to do is, it's just before I progress to the next one. The first thing is like, why? I think this will be a good question. Why? Well, the reason is that imagine, for instance, there would be some DeFi applications that we have in Cardano would be able to reason about it. Like we would have an Oracle integration, they would be published on chain, and basically you would see what is the balance sheet of a particular organization. For instance, Cardano Foundation, because what we are doing is we are starting for ourselves, but the product can, of course, be used by the community, by anybody. It's an open source product. So if you think about that, it's like, okay, so actually maybe we could be, maybe an organization could take a loan because it is healthy financially, right? It has a good balance sheet. Whereas an organization that has an unhealthy balance sheet might not be given possibility to take a DeFi loan, something like that. So that's the idea, right? We would have to explore it more deeply. Okay, the next one is basically layer 1, layer 2 split. So at the moment, with the amount of transactions that Cardano Foundation is producing per year, I see no big problems that we can store this data on layer 1. And as we know, I mean, in the financial systems, typically you have 10 years of retention policy for accounting data, more or less. It depends, actually. But yeah, in the case of Cardano layer 1, of course, it will be more than 10 years because we want the blockchain to survive and thrive much longer than that. But yes, somebody asked a question.
Yeah, Matti, there's a question in the chat from Mikhail. He's asking for the metadata label.
Yeah, 1517, I believe that we are at the moment using.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so if you think about that for small organization that can perhaps work or of our size, but the larger the organization, right? Imagine like, wow, it's like imagine these large players, right? The Fortune 500 companies. If we were really to send all the transactions which they have on layer 1, then basically the only thing Cardano would be doing is just servicing one large Fortune 500 company, right? That cannot possibly work, obviously. Now, I know probably a lot of people would cherish that because there will be a lot of revenue for the stake pool operators coming out of that. We would completely congest the chain. And the way the product currently is developed is that it tries to put as many transactions as possible within, as many accounting transactions as possible within one physical blockchain transaction using a relatively simple bin packing algorithm. Yeah, so if you have a lot of them, then it will split them. And basically, if you have more transactions per batch, then it will basically then put them into other physical blockchain transactions because you cannot physically do that. Cardano is limited to 16 kilobytes, right? So we are using a bin packing algorithm for that. But for a larger organizations, this will not work. We will just completely congest the Cardano layer 1. So there are a lot of ideas what we could do to have a layer 1, layer 2 split, basically. Or we get layers or something like that, so something that gives us possibility for a larger throughput for the data availability layer. But here the sky is the limit, really. I mean, it can be Ion, it can be Midgard, it can be Reeve, it can be Midnight, and we could experiment with some of the ZK and privacy features, especially for those transactions that, due to legal and compliance reasons, we simply cannot put on chain. Midnight is definitely an interesting idea to explore, or even S3 bucket from Amazon, if that's what a particular organization wants. There's nothing speaking against it. We're not picking winners or losers. The idea is here to have possibilities, right? Which actually brings me naturally to the next point, which is L2 multi-syncs. So who says that we have to store into one layer 2 solution, right? Nobody says that. You could store something to layer 1, like the main commitment, but then you can potentially store to multiple layer 2s. And that gives you redundancy, for instance, right? If, for instance, Reeve decides all the validators decide to shut down the network, which shouldn't happen. There are some guarantees in Reeve. I was reading a document for 100 years of data guarantee. But, you never know. We are in a very young industry, who knows? Well, then you would have that on Ion, for instance, or you would have that also on S3 bucket. So that's what I call multi-syncs. Sync is where you store the database. Identity wallet integration, so using the Cardano Foundation one, especially initially starting with the blockchain part, and have carry envelopes wrapper. But that would effectively, if we would go down this route, then most likely we would get rid of the ADA handle, because that's kind of like competing a little bit. Although there is also an idea that we had that we could establish a link between an ADA handle and carry identity. I believe Sunday Labs or somebody from the ecosystem, I can't remember exactly, has experimented with linking other handles to something. But that's probably too deep for now. And I'm just saying that, it depends on the investigation efforts. Now, the blockchain integration part with the identity wallet would be a good beginning, but actually the team has been also discussing, like, why not go big? Why not replace completely Keycloak authentication, like 100%, and replace it with the identity wallet? So that's much more ambitious, obviously, but definitely possible. And you could authorize certain operations that you are doing on your identity wallet, on your DID, right? Because of the communication that is established between the ERP, not the ERP system, between the Reeve and the edge device, a mobile device. So definitely a lot of cool ideas related to that. And we're certainly not married to Keycloak. It's a very great technology, but it's not Web 2 native. It's okay. And the last point on the list is the full reconciliation and validation for blockchain transactions. We have a very good reconciliation for our ERP systems. So we are reconciling that we didn't miss any transaction, that the amounts are correct and all these things. But for our blockchain transactions, we have rather a simple, at the moment, reconciliation or validation that can be also extended. So that's it from me. Are there any questions?
Actually, there is one in the chat from Mikhail. He is mentioning that, let's say that in 5 years, every company in ICE uses these to store their financial reports. What would be the ideal way to identify companies? Lay numbers, VAT number, stock tickers? Does the org object to these details?
That's a very good question. I appreciate the question, but we don't need to look any further than the soft launch that we did. So let's do that now. And in the soft launch, this is the blog post. What you can see here, we can go to. Okay, let's keep it simple because life is enough complicated. So let's take a look at the reports. Reports are much simpler. So if you open a report, what you see here at the top is an organization that published the report. And there is one field that we've been thinking about, actually two fields that are very, very, very important, which is called the country code and the tax ID number. So we believe that at the moment, that this is the unique combination to identify the company in every country. So even if you have a clash with the tax number, then basically those two fields together, they should be unique. So we identify by the tax ID number of an organization. Currently, no stock ticker. I mean, stock ticker we wouldn't be able to use. I know this was just an example, but we wouldn't be able to use for a very simple reason. Not everybody's on the stock exchange. Small organizations are not on the stock exchange, for sure. Any more questions?
I see in the metadata, for example, there's no signature on chain. Is that for a specific reason? Like if you want to have auditors? Like you would have like Ernst & Young that is an auditor of your company and they say, yes, we approve these and they're the legal, verified, actual, correct, like.
Yes, there is no auditors because at the moment there is no support for auditors. This is actually something that we want to extend the product with in the future. So MVP does not contain support for auditors, but
now I could also publish numbers for Cardano Foundation on chain, and you would have no way of seeing if that was a real one or I posted a fraudulent.
Well, that's not true. That's why we have another handle, right? Another sub-handle identity. So if it's coming from our wallet, then it is from us, basically, right? And regarding whether those values are correct, yes, for that exactly you have the auditors, but we don't have the support. But yes, you can publish those numbers, but it will not come from your sub-handle, basically. So we are using NFT as an authorization token, a sub-handle at the moment. you don't have access to that token. So you can't.
Yeah, no, indeed.
But good question.
Just thinking from a like it's nice in the Cardano world having an ADA handle. It's nice. Just thinking further down the road in terms of normal people, how are they?
Further
like,
down the road is this point here, right? Identity wallet integration. So the carry technology, is quite sophisticated, and you have a Glyph, you have legal identities. That's where we want to go, right? And that's what I said during the presentation, that it could potentially completely get rid of the other handle if we do that, because then we have from my point of view, like the identities which can be legally recognizable. As much as I love personally other handle, I use them everywhere, right? Nothing wrong with the project, but for the larger players, because they are traditional institutions, typically they might need an establishing this to the real world, to those traditional legislation arm. In other words, that their identity is anchored. I think this is a good word. Anchored to the legislative system with a lawyer. That's what Glyph gives you from with Carry, right? It's anchoring that to the real. Let me say to the real world, like we are living a little bit in a blockchain, a virtual world. Just kidding, right? But it's anchoring it to the traditional world. So that's definitely an ideal, and even we wanted already last year, we were already hoping to do that for the MVP event, but we had to descope it because it became too ambitious to do that, considering the whole scope of the project. We had to say, okay, other handle is there. For now, we're gonna go with other handles and revisit this when we have a bit of time to take air and breathe, basically.
Yeah, just because like in my question, I said like we could build a viewer application with an Aura sync that scans for these types of transactions and exposes it into to a public human readable. So you have like one public Reeve verifier, bad at naming things, that just lists all these companies have recorded all their data, and this is like you could. Like I go a lot on investing.com if I want to know something about a company, about a stock, and I go through their balance sheet and their income statement, and that's just what they provide. I suppose, I hope that also goes through auditors and verifiers. But like I think it could be super cool if that could be done through Reeve. Like they would all post it on chain, signature, verified, indexable, readable. Well, I think that's our dream.
This is definitely our dream, but let me just assure you, there are no lack of ideas in the team, right? the difficulty is that it's relatively challenging to build such a product for an organization of our size and support it and so on and so forth. There's no problem with ideas. The problem is how can we, in a step-by-step way, in a predictable manner with the milestones or with versions and iterations of the product get there. But there's no lack of ideas. That's, in fact, there's one idea that I didn't mention because it's just, that's not the point, but I was just talking yesterday to a product owner, very interesting idea involving AI, right? There's no problem with ideas, right? So just to be clear, but yeah, that's, for instance, I think is a good opportunity also to show that this is how our balance sheet looks like for 2023. And as you can see, it's all on chain, and you can also go back, and I'm just opening a blog post, right? It's all public information. Where was that? Oh no, sorry, I think, excuse me, here. Yeah, but we can also have a look at one example of a traditional API 1 or module 1, sorry, how we call it. Some people call it API 1, which is the individual transactions, which, by the way, because you could already see that here, it has been published by Reeve. Subhandle.
Like in this transaction, you're getting to like 15.8 kilobytes.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. We have a bin packing algorithm. That's what I mentioned, right? We have a bin packing algorithm, and we are trying to pack as much data as possible to layer 1.
So you can actually take all the financial records and split them amongst 15 transactions that are fully packed.
Yes, it depends obviously on the import. If the import is small, then
it's a small transaction.
Then you don't even fully send it. Yeah. But if the import is big, then of course you fully make it. And actually, this is an interesting thing that you mentioned, because we specifically. This was, by the way, I forgot what was the ISO, but by the way, we can talk about this in a moment. But what I wanted to say is that we specifically thought about how to do this. Because imagine you are making an import, so the blockchain publisher would immediately send it as the transactions are piping through and they are being approved. Well, then basically we send them to the blockchain and it wouldn't pack them efficiently. Because, it's already ready, 3 transactions, bam, put on the blockchain. So there's a special code which tries to delay a little bit the transactions for a few hours. I won't get into too many details, so that it the most efficiently packs them up to Cardano blockchain, right? So that we pay the least amount of fees and we don't generate like crazy amount of very small transactions, which doesn't make any sense, because you could put much more data to it, right? And yeah, the ISO that we are using for the crypto assets is ISO 24165. I just forgot about it. And this is the format which has been quite crafted with our accountants, because this format needs to be sound from the accounting point of view, right? It's actually mostly the format that accountants will read. But it's also a format that should be understandable for anybody, not just an accountant. So we crafted that format upon many iterations, and it can be extended. In fact, for our launch, we will be already extending the reports a little bit, adding additional field called version, which was not there. But API, so module 1, which is you see at the moment, there are no plans to extend it at the moment. There is also a possibility, sorry, now I remember something to do. There is also a possibility that we can even extend that one with version 1.1 for an MVP launch. But it will be additive changes, right? We don't want to break what is existing. We want to extend it, just like how you do typically in the big data projects like Hadoop and BigQuery and these types of things. You add new things. You don't remove fields. Removing a field is a cardinal sin in big data, right? Projects. Well, it's not, but you would have to rewrite the whole data. Anyway, you get my point. All right, so that's how it looks like. The transaction, let's have a look at the like a journal transaction, for instance. It has a type, has a date, and it has transaction items, right? Staking rewards, revenue, crypto transfer in, what was at that time, the exchange rate, what's the document number supporting it, and so on and so forth. So be my guest. Feel free to look into that. Everything is on chain. With cost center, you can have a look at project that was involved and so on and so forth.